from a strongly conservative Trump critic, John Bolton, the former ambassador to the United Nations and national security advisor to Donald Trump in that first administration. Ambassador Bolton, great to have you on the show. We've heard from you in the past about some of the darker aspects of Donald Trump's character you've talked about. Do you think there is the faintest chance that on the back of this really, really big, huge victory, he will find a sort of inner generosity and slightly change the way he behaves, or not? Is that naive?
Of course not. He's going to be the same Donald Trump. It's not such a huge victory. Look, it's a clear victory. It's not a landslide. We don't have final vote figures, but it looks like the vote totals, popular vote totals, will for Harris and Trump will be lower than the vote totals in 2020. That is to say, the national vote will actually have decreased. Now, we need to know the final vote, but it sounds like both parties will have done worse than they did in 2020 in terms of their total votes. Harris will have done particularly worse. But that when the vote total goes down like that, that's hardly going to be a huge ringing endorsement of anybody.
So do you think Trump is going to come in and, as it were, smash the guardrails and the constraints on the presidency in the way that's been talked about?
Well, I think that gives him more credit than he's due. He's not that organized. I think he'll stumble around and crush things, but he'll have a few priorities. Immigration will certainly be one of them. And it appears from what he's been saying in his campaign rallies that increasing tariffs, as he suggested, 10% on all imports into the United States from anywhere in the world will be a priority. There's a question whether he has legal authority to do it. But in typical Trump fashion, I think he'll try and do it and say, sue me to those who object. That could have a significant immediate economic impact, not just on us, but on the entire global economy.
And certainly on the UK. I think he's talked about up to 20% tariffs. But presumably the other effect is that it imports inflation, which will hit many of the people who have just voted for him.
Yeah, that's because Trump doesn't understand tariffs. He thinks foreign governments are paying us money. He doesn't realize that the people who are exporting into the U.S. market are the ones who actually pay the tariffs, and they will try to the extent they can to pass 100% on to American consumers in terms of higher prices, as you say.
Let me ask you about his instincts on Ukraine now. I was talking to one of President Putin's former advisors in Moscow yesterday, who said that, A, he expected then that Trump would win, and B, that Trump would almost immediately phone Zelensky and Putin and demand a ceasefire and then start to discuss and impose his peace plan. Do you think that's the likely scenario for the next few days and weeks?
Well, I don't know if he'll do it immediately. I think that from the Russian point of view, they would be better advised to have Putin call Trump. They've issued a statement, pretty frosty statement from the Russian foreign ministry. I'm not sure whether that's a bureaucratic response or not. But from the Russian point of view, it'd be much better if Putin called up Trump and said, Donald, I'm so glad you got elected. That guy Biden was an idiot. He's caused so many problems. Let's get together. We can solve this Ukraine thing. That would be what Putin ought to do. Maybe he doesn't have the wit to do it, but I would be worried if I were Zelensky. I don't think we're going to hear good things from Trump on Ukraine.
No, Zelensky has already put out a sort of brave statement welcoming the result and so forth. But he's also been, I think, accused by Trump of being a great salesman who returns from each visit to the United States with $60 billion worth of new kit. So Trump clearly regards him with deep suspicion.
Right. I mean, Trump still wants to know, where is Hillary Clinton's server? When she put it in Ukraine to hide it in 2016, when Ukraine was aiding the Hillary Clinton campaign, there were leaks out of the meeting in September between Trump and Zelensky to the effect that Trump said, don't worry, I'm just saying all this for campaign purposes. I'm really not going to tank your government. Trump may have said that in just a coldly calculated maneuver to avoid problems between then and November the 5th, which he has now successfully done. I think he's made his position very clear. He wants this war over with. He doesn't care particularly what the what the outline of the settlement is. He wants it off his table as soon as he can. If he could do it before January the 20th, I think he'd like to. I don't think that's possible.
Let me ask you about an area I know you're very interested in, we've talked about before, which is the Middle East. What do you think the message... I know Netanyahu has already been in touch. The disappearance of Yoav Gallant, the defense minister, means that Washington has lost a reliable interlocutor in the Israeli government. What do you think the message from Trump to Netanyahu now is?
Well, I should point out first, this obviously makes Netanyahu the first foreign leader to get to Trump after the election, which shows Netanyahu knows his man. It was the right thing from him to do from his perspective. I think Trump basically said, Bibi, do whatever you want. Just finish this up by January the 20th. These are Biden wars. Biden's war in Ukraine, Biden's war in the Middle East. Trump wants them off the table more than he wants anything else.
But I wonder what that means. Is that a sort of flickering green light to go after Iran in the short term, do you think?
Yes, I think it is. And by the way, I think somebody ought to destroy Iran's nuclear weapons program. If it's Israel, that's great. If he does it during the transition, that's great too. And by the way, it won't end the war in the Middle East by January the 20th, but I do think it's a green light if that's what was said.
That's very interesting. So this is very momentous for Ukraine. It's momentous for the Middle East. We don't know what's going to happen. I suppose the biggest question of all is how the Chinese react to this and what it means for Taiwan, because Donald Trump has made it clear that, as far as he's concerned, the great global struggle is between the United States and China, and Taiwan is the possible flashpoint. If we're looking for real trouble, that's where we should be looking now, right?
Well, I think that's right, although I think the axis that's growing really quite strong now between China and Russia shows that all of these conflicts are ultimately related. And the fact there are now North Korean troops fighting with Russia in Russian territory against Ukraine should wake everybody in Europe up to the nature of this Chinese-Russian axis. I think, again, from China's point of view, I'm very worried that Xi Jinping will try and be number two after Bibi Netanyahu to get on the phone with Trump to say nearly what Putin would say. I'm so glad you've been elected. We've got so many problems because of Joe Biden. Surely if we get together, we can resume our negotiations on the biggest trade deal in history. And I think Trump would jump at that.
The hard men get together, the big men get together in the room. John, I'd love your reflections finally on this election result, because, you've been observing, the flaws and the strengths of the Trump style of politics for a long time now. I don't know whether you were surprised by what's happened and what you think it means for your country, what it means for America, what it means for migration and the economy.
Yeah, well, it's a clear victory. It's not a landslide, but it's a clear win. And Republicans will take control of the Senate and not certain yet, look to keep control of the House. So I think it's a broad victory. We don't know so much about the state and local races, but certainly at the national level. So I don't view this necessarily as a Trump win. I think it's a win for the proposition that the United States remains a center-right country. And when one party is perceived as advocating a move to the left, or the voters feel the country has been moved to the left, the whole wokeness, DEI set of issues, they speak with a clear voice. We are a center-right country, and that's what we want. So I think the Democrats have a lot of internal reflection to do on how they managed to do so poorly, largely because of the way Biden governed, with huge budget deficits that fueled inflation.
And we've talked about it before, I think, all the comments about Trump will destroy American democracy, there's an incipient fascism in the country, all of that stuff. Do you think it's been grossly overblown?
Well, I hope so. I think Trump's going to do a lot of damage in a second term. I think it's going to be a lot of struggle. But I tell you, just as Hillary Clinton called Trump's supporters deplorables in 2016, and people didn't like that, being called all the names that Republicans are always called over the years. I've been called them too. People don't like that. They don't like to be looked down on by the educated classes. And this is, we now have close to 40% of the Hispanic American vote coming to Republicans. So the Democratic Party's coalition is in danger of collapsing around its ears if it doesn't get its act together.
A very, very big moment for world and American politics. Ambassador John Bolton, thank you so much for talking to us tonight. Now then, coming up, gender and reproductive rights were a central issue in the election and a key focus of the Democratic campaign. So does this